to, now that our recording is started, I'm going to dive right in, and because we have lots of quotes to hear from tonight, so we'll get started. All right, so hello and welcome to our second annual LiTFUSE Faculty Scholar Reading, celebration of creative community collaboration, mentorship, and support. I'm delighted to be hosting this event this year, and we have a spectacular lineup tonight. Each of our 2021 faculty poets will read several poems following an original poem and introduction by their LiTFUSE scholarship recipients. There are many, many poets here this evening, so we'll keep the readings brief, and we'll start with our friends zooming in from the East Coast so they're not up too late before tomorrow morning's classes. Before we begin, a couple of quick housekeeping things. Please do mute your audio unless you are reading or speaking, just so we can all, there's a lot of us here, just to avoid some echo and background noise. And then I'd like to offer several acknowledgements. So first, I'm presenting this program to you today from my home in Idaho on the traditional lands of the Namiapoo people, and Taitian Arts and Humanities, within which LiTFUSE is housed, likewise acknowledges their presence on the ceded lands of the Confederated Tribes and Bands of the Yakama Nation. LiTFUSE 2021 is brought to you in partnership with our parent organization, Taitian Arts and Humanities, and with generous grant support from Humanities Washington, the National Endowments for the Arts and Humanities, and the Poetry Foundation. We are grateful to our community sponsors at Inkling's Bookshop and for all the work they've done to help us pivot our usual bookstore offering to an online shop for the second year in a row, to the Coffee House Poets for their outreach and promotional efforts, to our team members, Amber Knox and Brandis Worley at Taitian Arts for their managing and marketing efforts on behalf of LiTFUSE, and to our volunteer Zoom room hosts for this weekend's workshops, Kate Hotler and Ed Stover. A very big thanks to my LiTFUSE comrades, Laura Walker and Jen Lynn, for everything they've done behind the scenes to make this year's virtual event and upcoming LiTFUSE programs possible. I'm going to add an extra shout for Laura because so much of the behind the scenes tech work has been 1000% her doing, and I just email you about it. So thank you, Laura, so much. And then finally, of course, thank you to our faculty and attendees. We couldn't do this without you, even remotely, so thank you. And whether you are new to LiTFUSE or returning as a longtime regular, we want to express our particular gratitude for your financial support this year and always, but especially recently, like most community arts programs, LiTFUSE relies heavily on your donations and registration fees. And the pandemic has been extremely hard on us these past 2 years, so your support means more now than ever. Please give what you can. We'll share a donation link via our website in the chat at some point during the reading to help us rebuild LiTFUSE for many an in-person weekend to come. Okay, with that, please join me in welcoming our first readers, El Renee reading and then introducing Camille Dungy.
Yes, happy to be with y'all tonight. I'm going to read a poem that I worked on with Camille at the Minnesota Northwoods Writers Conference, where she prompted me to take scissors and tape and walk outside. Genealogical trip to Pulaski, Virginia. The mayfly swarm undulates like the perfect hip roll, mottled bodies plow brown bodies midair. Wings fade as fine gossamer in June sun, buoyed by a buzz too quick to be caught by my eye, which doesn't want to bear the witnessing. How nature persists in getting on with it publicly, life, sex, death in the span of a day. I turn away, overcome by shame. I look through my Ford's cracked glass at white mile markers blurring a black highway. Why does our making always begin in denial? When I find my great-great-grandmother, Frances Houndshell, in census records, branded mulatto and a mother at age 9, I do not wince. I practice numbness, focus only on getting back to the alpha mama who owned her own body, her own name, somewhere off the coast of Ghana or Nigeria, maybe, where her breath, not her sweat, was enough currency. In Virginia, it's common to see the dead mayflies skip across pavement like flat rocks tossed side-armed at a stream's surface, then lodged in sidewalk cracks among orphan pebbles, sticks, and sprigs of grass. I'd rather look at uncountable rows of tobacco leaves which leave me breathless, dizzy even. All those green ears flap like an elephant's hello, hang woody scents heavy through my car vents like next of kin, hugs hugged only at family reunions. In death, female mayfly lips freeze into an O, as if reading a whistle, as if leaving evidence of no, after the males give chase, grab their tiny legs, drag them to the ground, after the mount. It happens like this. Whole lives purposed for labor and procreation, night collects her bounty. By daybreak, bodies piled by the hundreds on windowsills and porch corners in the middle of a passage, pedestrian stroll between a jail and courthouse. The nice white genealogist at the local library tells me Francis's age must be wrong, an error in reporting. But I know a nymph can be snatched from her skin, molt and molt until she becomes something new, gains wings if only for a brief view of the dust she will soon call home. I'm happy to introduce poet, writer, editor, teacher, mama, partner, gardener, bird watcher, ballet applauder, language listener, heart coat, heart song. I could go on and on about the many roles that award-winning author Camille T. Dungy inhabits with care and tenderness. Her collection of essays, Guidebook to Relative Strangers, was a finalist for the National Book Critics Circle Award, and she is the author of 4 lauded collections of poetry, most recently Trophic Cascade, winner of the Colorado Book Award, and she won a Guggenheim Fellowship in 2019. Beyond all of these accomplishments, I'm astounded by the way Camille still carves out room to pour into others and create spaces for communities at events like this. With no further ado, Camille T. Dungy, y'all.
Al, I love you so much. That poem, oh, way to kick it off. That's a lot to be the first one in this amazing crowd of readers, and you brought it, and I love you. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm glad to kind of be with you in this way. I'm going to read 2 poems, one really short and one not really short. There are these moments of permission between raindrops, space, certainly, but we call it all rain. I hang in the undrenched intervals while Callie is sleeping, my old self necessary and imperceptible as air. That was a short one. And then this poem, actually, I wrote after that same workshop that El Renee just described. I got home and Amy Nasuka Matado asked for a poem for Orion, and I was like, I have no poems, but I just made these other people do this assignment, so I did it myself. And this is what happened when I did the same thing. One night in 1888, as the French steamboat Abdelkader powered from Marseille to Algiers, news reports proclaim the sky became quite black with swallows. The channel between one life and another has always been subject to sudden explosions. Those swallows must have been exhausted. The birds alighted in the thousands on sails, ropes, and yards of the Abdelkader. I began with birds, thousands. Some wandered into cabins, ate from passengers' delighted hands. I will return to the birds, but you should know the Abdelkader was named for a man who died 5 years before they blacked the sky around the boat that bore his name. If you don't know how many died, how many more he saved in the decades of conflict between France and Algiers, while Abdelkader was emir, maybe you don't know what a wonder this was to report. I read about it in the New York Times. This must have sounded in those days like the stories we hear now of cranes, white-napped red-capped, who nest nowhere securely but along Korea's demilitarized zone. Those winged strangers remained all night on the vessel, the article claims. In the morning, fed and rested, they flew off for coastal islands still controlled by Spain, which, as you know, once kept as its own our neighbors, Honduras, El Salvador, Mexico. I've been trying to write about the Abdel Qadir swallows for more years than I am able to count. Yesterday, you apologized for arriving late for dinner. You'd seen a small, bent woman walking with heavy bags near the grocery store, and you stopped to ask if she would let you drive her home. You are the size of Black man people here consider frightening. The woman must have been exhausted. She settled her body in the cabin and you carried her safely home. Some days, especially as I'm reminded of how we fight the animals we are, who need to migrate as much as we need to settle, to stay, how we'll tear apart and strand and starve and slaughter that part of us who takes flight from one place to some other. I try to recreate this. A rather curious episode in natural history occurred the other day. The story I love so much begins. Thank you.
Thank you, El Renee and Camille. That was, I can't imagine, well, anyone could have started beautifully, but I can't imagine a better way to start today than with both of you reading. And thank you also for taking the first slot. I realized in a last minute email exchange with El Renee that we were putting a little pressure on you. So thank you for taking it up with such grace. Up next, we have Court Fund and Elizabeth Bradfield.
Hi, thanks so much for holding the space tonight, Lauren and LiTFUSE and everybody who's here. I'm really excited to be here. Tonight I'm going to read a sonnet from my sonnet crown called The Current Conditions of Longing. In the arena, my girlhood slips a hand through my hair. It's unclear if she wants to be me or fuck me. The dyke in me clings to both. Later, ask the lesbian I interview how she identifies, to which she responds, the most straight-looking lesbian you'll ever meet. We three, her, my girlhood, me, giggle. To giggle is to emit chaos. It is not an agreement unless agreement means that everything is permeable and who is really straight anyway? The cowboy in me asks, stretching a pair of panties over a goat's hind legs. The crowd erupts, a crow evacuating every throat. Jay texts that she's met someone, effervescent and skirted by what humor we allow ourselves. Jay's texts stop. The dyke in me coos, a queen never lights their own cigarette. My girlhood, anxious for something to do with her hands, adjusts a bra strap. Thank you. I am honored to introduce Elizabeth Bradfield tonight, a poet whose work to me is remarkably brave in that it traverses remote landscapes and forms, from the personal to the persona to the collaborative hybrid, from narrative to lyric. Her poems transform her reader into the curious explorer. It's undeniable from reading any of her collections that this poet is an explorer, whether it be language, landscapes, history, or mathematics. Bradfield is curious on the page. In Theorem, a visual collaboration between Antonia Contro, she writes, what was created in its chaos? Light, dust, shadow. For me, for my sisters, for us all, I am still trying to map it. I'm still trying to calculate what can be traced to its red-shifted source. She's a writer, a naturalist, the author of Toward Antarctica, Once Removed, Approaching Ice, Interpretive Work and Theorem. Her poems and essays have appeared in the New Yorker, West Branch, Poetry, The Atlantic Monthly, Orion, and elsewhere. For the past 20 some years, she has balanced her work as a writer with work as a naturalist and guide, both locally and abroad. I am so delighted to introduce Elizabeth Bradfield.
Oh man, Court, thank you for that reading, even more than the introduction, which is embarrassing, but thank you for that reading. That was such a beautiful, beautiful poem. I'm so glad to hear your words. So thank you so much. And I'm glad to be here with you. And I've got a couple of poems that I picked out to read. And the first one is a pandemic poem, because I know that we pivoted to the online mode here. And I've been thinking a lot about what that means and what the pandemic has meant and continues to mean. So this is a poem that's fairly recent. I'm a slow writer. It was written last year in 2020. It's titled Touchy, and it references words, but also the poet Stanley Kunitz, who is a poet who did so much on the East Coast where I live now to nurture other poets. And he has a poem called Touch Me that I'm really interested in. So anyway, this is a poem called Touchy. Touchy, we say, when someone's sensitive, so touchy, so dangerous and delicate and ready to tip. Touching, though, is sweet. And we are touched by the gift, the thought, moved into knowledge of care, if not love. Touched, too, means crazy, God-kissed, the brain lit otherwise. I hope we've all known someone who has got the touch, able to ease a knot, make any machine hum true, tune a string. And touch me, says Stanley in the poem that always chokes me up, as if the hand of a wife would bring me back to myself or to the selves we both once were. Don't touch. First warning, the stove, the open sockets shock, the body unknown to you and all the bodies it in turn has willfully in turn not allowed such intimacy. When I first felt yearning for the skin I always kept hidden to touch another's hidden skin, it was the early decade of a different, terrible virus. The danger was known and unknown both, and in some small way, the risk of infection, not unlike the risk of intimacy. In touch, we say when we know how someone is faring. Touch and go when we're not sure how things will turn out. And then the second poem I want to read, I've been thinking, as many I'm sure of us have been, about the Anthropocene, environmental questions, and how do we engage. And a good friend of mine gave me the gift of offering a Girl Scout product of her mother, and that led to this poem, which is titled Plastic, A Personal History. How can I find a way to praise it? Do the early inventors and embracers churn with regret? I don't think my parents, born in the swing toward ubiquity, chew and chew and chew on plastic, but of course they do. Bits in water, food, flesh, air, and their parents. I remember Dad mocking his mother's drawer of saved rubber bands and his father-in-law's red corroded jerry can, patched and patched, never replaced for new, for never rusting. Cash or plastic? Plastic even for gum. We hate the $5 minimum, bills, paperless, automatic, almost unreal. My toys were plastic, castle and circus train and yo-yo. Did my lunches ever get wrapped in waxed paper? Or was it all saran, saran, saran? Sarah's mom was given in Girl Scouts a blue sheet of plastic to cut, sew, and trim with white piping into pouches for camping. Sarah has it still, brittle but useful. Merit badge for waterproofing, for everlasting. You, too, must have heard stories, now quaint as carriages, of first plastic, pre-plastic, eras of glass, waxcloth, and tin, of shared syringes. All our grocery bags growing up were paper, bottom hefted on forearm, top crunched into grab. We used them to line the kitchen garbage pail. Not that long ago, maybe a decade, I made purses for my sisters out of putty-colored, red-lettered plastic Safeway bags. I'd snag a stack each time I went, then fold and sew, quilt with bright thread, line with thrift store blouses. They were sturdy and beautiful, rainproof and light, clever, so clever. I regret them. And the plastic toothpicks, folders, shoes that seemed so cheap, so easy, so use again, and thus less wasteful than. What did we do before? To-go lids. Things must have just spilled and spilled. Do you know what I mean? I mean, what pearl forms around a grain of plastic in an oyster? Is it as beautiful? Would you wear it? Would you buy it for your daughter so she in turn could pass it down and pass it down and pass it down? Thank you.
Just incredible. Thank you, Court and Liz, so much for all of the poems, the introductions, the context, everything. Thank you so much. Next, we have Trudy Rona and Molly McCulley-Brown.
Hi, I'm Trudy Rona, and I'm going to be reading a poem called Creature Joy. I dreamt my recipe for losing. Good omens wearing mink, 2 days, to drink the dog hair, a single heavy clementine peeled to no fruit, only starchy tendons, their bitter, webbing like crinkled streamers, tangling about the ceiling, at the first middle school party where no one will kiss me. How long I waited by the fire pit to be asked, how badly I want it to be chosen. I heard of a beast that breathes through its ears and forces its jaw wide to hear all that we listen to for free. Beach waves, lighters, snapping to flame, a fallen branch, gonged against its once tree, or so they say. I have not known fields. I have called the baseball diamond empty because I couldn't see, the teeming deer visible only by distant street lamp light, catching the wet of their shock-widened eyes. I have been wrong about so much, forgotten often. I'm interloper in their acres. Creature joy. I don't want anything to be mine. I just want to watch. See how you walk, on what legs, the hour you tire, how you cut an apple into slices, how you eat it whole. And it is my distinct pleasure and honor to introduce Molly McCulley-Brown, who, as I'm sure many of you know, is a celebrated and singular poet and essayist, professor of English at Old Dominion University, author of 3 books, recipient of numerous awards, including, but not limited to, an Amy Lowell Poetry Traveling Scholarship, a United States Artists Fellowship, and a fellowship from the Kenyon Review, this being the way that she came into my life. While I was a student at Kenyon, I spent more time than I can really wrap my head around in her office, discussing work, life, and of course, language. It is a distinct pleasure that I don't take for granted, being the benefactor of Molly's seemingly endless generosity as an instructor, as a confidant, and a mentor. As a poet and essayist, she is attentive, imaginative, and colossally considered. And as a human, perhaps even more strikingly and more importantly, she is a treasure defined by her goodness. It's beginning to occur to me as I'm here once again in an opportunity afforded to me because of her thoughtfulness, her singular ability to care, that if one is so lucky to step into the orbit of Molly McCulley Brown, that individual may truly never be rid of that gift. It is my great honor to finally introduce Molly McCulley Brown.
No, Trudy, what a wonderful and talented dear heart you are. That poem made me miss your instinct for image and wish that we were in the classroom together again, but I am glad to be here reading with you. I'm going to read two short poems tonight, a newish one and then an older poem that I decided to read when I went looking for something that felt steeped in gratitude and joy, because that feels like a thing we all need right now. But this first poem is sad, like much of my work. And it's about reckoning. It's part of a series that it's about reckoning with and thinking through what it means to live in a body that has continually been made and remade by the continual violence of surgical intervention. And it's a series of letter poems addressed to a maker figure who is part God and part doctor and part person you're grateful to and part person you're angry at. Dear Maker, listen, if I can't know what you first whittled me out of, I would like to see the knife. The quick groove in an upper lip is called a philtrum, like a blade slipped once, caught just before the damage grew too large to make the best of it, to fill a body up with neat little canals and say, you meant to cut a river there. If I can't know my body before it was riven, show me your hands. Right now, there's just the ghost of how they turned around my body, wrenched the whole thing toward another north. And this second poem is called Transubstantiation. And for those of you who don't know, who might not know, transubstantiation is the idea in the Catholic Church that when you take communion, the bread and the wine become the literal body and blood of Christ. Transubstantiation. It's the middle of the night. I'm just a little loose on beer and blues and battered air and all the ways this nowhere looks like home. The fields and boarded houses dead with summer, the filling station rowdy with the rumor of another place. Cattle pace the distance between road and gloaming, inexplicably awake. Then the bathtubs littered in the pasture, for sale or salvage or some secret labor stranger than I know. How does it work again? The alchemy that shapes them briefly into boats, and then the bones of great felled beasts, and once more into keening copper bells before I even blink. Half a mile out, the city builds back up along the margin. Country songs cut in and out of static on the radio. Lord, most of what I love mistakes itself for nothing. Thank you.
You're all making it really hard for me to not say things about each of these poems. I don't have time to say things about each of these poems when I'm introducing the next set of poets, but thank you for the challenge of keeping my mouth shut when I really want to talk about all these poems so much. Thank you so much, Trudy and Molly. Next, we have Christina Correa and Maya Marshall.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christina Correa, and I'm going to share a short piece with you And I kept my introduction brief too, but it's not without just the most bursting love. So I'll go right into it. This is a poem about arrival. Calle Guerrero Noble. Quietly, a thing repeated to oneself for life, a prayer that he may never have to experience something as irrevocable as cold. Name the place I've flown from to this canary contraption. Dutiful sun in his gaze, distant shivers like a lizard on the road. El frío es cosa mala. No matter the fallen streetlights, ocean-ripped debt, roots that will not be repaid. Hasta Jesús Cristo lo sintió. The driver's finger conducts the gospel to a line of cars narrowly turning towards us. El hambre, el sed, el frío. His cataracts, a thin layer of fresh rain in the rear view, and my strained interpretation of holes and debris out of focus. En 2 semanas se caliente los vestidos, he winks, pleased with what he knows. And now my pleasure to introduce the wonderful Maya Marshall. Maya Marshall is a poet who cares. As an educator, editor, mentor, advocate, and friend, she walks in this world with the tender consideration of someone who touches many lives. And I am blessed, as we all are tonight, to welcome her magnanimous presence.
Thank you, my friend. That's lovely. It's a lovely thing. Like your poem. Okay. Thanks for coming and joining us. Thanks for all of you being here and making this space and having us and calling us teachers. Hopefully we learn things and we'll learn things too. I'm going to read 2 or 3 poems, all from this little book that's going to come out in June called All the Blood Involved in Love. Can you hear me? Good. Here we go. The Lavender Menace was this group of lesbians that disrupted a national women's conference because they said, oh, your little pet project of being lesbians is a distraction from our feminist movement. And like, fuck that. So I'm glad they interrupted. And because that group was also fairly homogenous, I'm gonna include all the brown folks who did not get included in it when I say Lavender Menace considers adoption. I'm so American, I close my ports of nourishment with a bit of bread, a bourbon, a burrito bowl, a nipple, a penis. I take in and end like oceans, our landfills. My belly and arms swell, striate like felled logs. Consider the common inclination to love, into submission. Hush, baby. I do this for myself when I masturbate to fall asleep. I have been a woman for some time now, a uterine cavern, an acute sense of danger. I want to be a mother unlike my own, and I am ashamed to think I think so little of her resilience, her desperate love of me. I do not want to bear a child because I do not want to feel never alone. I'm so American, I dream of children discarded. What happens to a child detained? How many can I be a home to? All right. In this one, Lavender Menace adopts a Black boy. In summer, black boy burns. Say black boy takes shelter. See his locked hair fairy. See him. See him wash his hands and brush his teeth. See his smile shatter light. Imagine summer camp. Black boy afloat in Lake Michigan. Black boy piñata. Black boys dance. Death drop. A black boy is confetti. Black boy could be a first cousin once removed. Black boy would be 10 now, or 12. Black boy looks like a father he's never seen. Black boy is grandma's boy. He is amalgam. Black boy is dragonfly, brilliant, iridescent, conspicuous in flight. 24,000 ommatidia. Black boy is anther and filament. Black boy is a tiger. Adopted black boy is a steal, only 17K. Black boy is waiting, is chicken chest. Black boy is grandfather clock tall. Black boy is never a clock tower. Black boy is egret wings, is flying, is his father's arm. Black boy is lisp and puppy scented. Black boy is whipping boy. Black boy is Billy Goat's gruff. Black boy's first home is ragdoll, is a closet corner. Is tinder purple. Black boy is plum pit, walnut hall. Black boy is curupira. Black boy is a dark city, is an open window, is a roving squad car, is crashing glass and song. A single black boy is the softest avocado in the market. All right. You, Molly, brought in this idea of joy. And so I'm going to read this last Lavender Menace poem because there's a tenderness and there's a beauty in this little love poem. Lavender Menace considers the lovers in the photograph. The men nestle, one inched into the cleft of his love's thighs. They wait under the eye of the sun in the bull's eye of the camera's lens, as a white witness documents black love on a late spring day in Chesapeake, Virginia. One, eyes closed, lips resting against his fellow's cheekbone. The other, eyes open, stares forward, soft-browed, as if he's just opened his eyes. Two moles make a base clef of the curve of his left eye. Open exposure in this one frame. Loose clothes betray a slim collarbone, a meaty bicep, two modest black bellies, sun-coppered and hairy, the slightest catch in a fold, a clasp on an elbow. The lovers, caught, lean into each other, away from the leaves in front of the building, hold their spot on the blacktop of the complex's parking lot, locked as if in bronze. I have never seen a monument like this. Do-rag and chin-strap mustache, brawn-armed bear with a fresh, tight fade. I've lived at the corner of Confederate and Lincoln, spat on the stone feet of a gynecological barbarian, but never yet, seen equestrians erected high above men's heads, but never yet two sleek wide noses by one man's neck, tilted in supplication, mouth slit open to let the air dart in, hands wound lightly around a waist and lower back. Knuckles alit on a broad dockered thigh, two men spun like blossoming vines, shining in the splendor of two like soldiers in love, and light, not shadow. But here, the woman's eye has arrested our fellows in dewy day, without labored sweat or defiant glances, not off guard or posed, but seeming free and seeming safe in the baleen of each other's embrace. Thank you all. I'm excited to spend the weekend with you.
Thank you both so much. I'm really happy I had to hear those poems again after hearing them the first time. They take on so much added weight, meaning, et cetera, and Christina, your work as well. I'm sorry for the chat that was supposed to go to Diana and went to everyone. I was just trying to make sure she will still read for us, just in case Tommy is not here. We're not sure. Tommy, are you here in the audience this evening / reader group? All right, well, Diana, if you don't mind, we have a few other folks who are either without their faculty mentor or without their scholar this evening. So if you don't mind reading for us, without Tommy's presence here, I can say that Diana is an incredible teacher and human being who I've worked with 2 virtual LiTFUSEs in a row now, and someday I sincerely hope I will meet in person. But Diana Koiwen, if you will share a poem or 2 with us, I would be grateful.
Sure. Hi, good evening. I'm imagining our bodies in a similar space, because we were so close to it. And in some ways, we are doing it. Good to see familiar faces. And I hope your master classes were good today. Mine is still nourishing me. Just going to read 2 poems and then gladly listen as I have been. And this first one, oh my God, I wrote it like over 10 years ago, and then I opened it up again, and then I gave it a do-over. That happens sometimes. Oh. Selkie weaning young. Finding her hide, we trailed, fingers down then against, grains of fur thrusting shoulders into its waxy skin. This is how she found us, the pass draped about us like a cloak, hands separating peach halves from a core. Her form in the sound, a pandan leaf peeking through milk. The only seals in Vietnam, American men with green faces. And this last one is called subjunctive, and really the only thing you need to know, some folks maybe are familiar, but or not, I don't know. I've been doing a lot of video work with home videos from the archive of my family, mostly because it's where my brother is still alive, but I also encountered my parents' wedding and honeymoon video. And then when I was first watching them, I realized I had the same haircut as my mother and looked just like her. Anyway, we can talk about this another time, but that's all you need to know. And then I recreated her honeymoon with my fiance several years ago. I tripped to go to Hawaii for sure, but also like to wear 80s clothing. Subjunctive. When the tide returns, it paints over bay mud what evening drains from the sky. What advances spilling over seagrass, smudging pockmarks off the floor. Off the floor of her bunker, my mother lifts her heels so she might see. This is as tall as she'll ever be, and even in hiding, she grows toward light. Though she cannot see them, she knows how clams nudge deeper under cover. One limb slips out from a crack. Slipping into sand is like slipping into shadows, where running takes the form of waiting. Many years later, her daughter rewinds the mother's wedding, rewinds and pauses, pauses and rewinds, trailing a finger along the wrinkles of the transferred tape. There you are, when I find the woman I know, in a girl I'll never meet. Break your hands slowly through the mud until you run into something. The bride lifts her gloved hand to ward off sun. who to help us when we go to war. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. And thank you. I think once upon a time, I asked you for some videos for my digital storytelling class, and you shared that video with me. And to hear that poem now, having seen the video project, is it's really special. She does incredible video projects. If you can coax her into sharing those with you one of these days in class. So thank you. All right, next we have A. Anupama and Matthew Dickman.
Thanks, Lauren. Can you all hear me all right? Great. So thanks, Lauren. Thanks, LiTFUSE. And thanks, Matthew Dickman, for bringing me into this. It's been amazing already. And thank you, Diana. That was an amazing reading. Just blown away. And all of the poets. This has just been fantastic. So I'm going to read a poem from my new chapbook, which just arrived on Saturday. So thanks. I'm very excited to be reading from it for the first time. It's from Dancing Girl Press and Studio in Chicago, and it's titled Saffron Threaded. The poem is titled Pepper, and it's about one of my experiences teaching kids and teenagers in creative writing workshop. Pepper. Children making a list of the kinds of love will say doggy love and love of flying and pizza love and even love of colors, love of money. And I knew that when I started the exercise with a room full of 8-year-olds typing along to the scratch of my scented marker on the sheet of roll paper taped to the wall. The list got beautifully long, like a banana flower. After the workshop, they all skipped out of the room to their parents, and I wrote parents' love in a bit of free space near the top. My intern looked embarrassed when I said, maybe it's better that they don't know. No one can see what ball of fire holds them tight. Thank you. Thanks. And Lauren mentioned that Matthew wouldn't be able to join today because he was celebrating his son's birthday, or
he is here actually.
He is here.
He's here.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I'm here, but
Hey,
I'm also
Matthew.
I honor that poem was so fucking great. I am here. It's just I'm poetry dining and dashing. So right after this, I'm taking my newly 15-year-old to the new Marvel movie. So I'll have to watch everyone's readings later.
Yeah, that's awesome. Happy birthday.
I'll tell them.
So just, I just wanted to say a few words about Matthew, whom I met as a student in his workshop in grad school 10 years ago. And that was when I knew him for his first book, All American Poem. And it was just, I remember sitting in one of the restaurants in Montpelier, Vermont, and just, just like all the emotions just kind of running over my face. But I remember in that workshop probably getting on your nerves a little bit, Matthew. And, but I also remember the very generous and productive comments that you gave to everybody in that workshop. And, you just steered us towards, it was just the productive challenges of getting our work someplace else. And then earlier this year, when I joined the ekphrastic workshop that you were running at Attic, when writing poetry was just impossible. I had actually given up and I had started painting instead. But just Matthew made it possible for me to find another trail to join the journey again. So just an incredible teacher, and I'm so grateful.
Thanks, Anu. I'm so glad you're continuing the journey. That poem you read was fucking awesome. So thank you so much. Yes, Poetry Dine and Dash. I'm gonna read 2 poems and then I'm gonna leave. And I love all of you and I appreciate you. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you, Lauren. So great to read with all of you. So I'll just read these 2 new poems. Let's see here. A passing. You died in the morning and time did not stop. You were breathing and a nurse passed by your door in wintergreen scrubs, and then you were not breathing. Your death being like any death, invincible with Hitchcockian shadows, passing over your hand where the IV port no longer had a job to do. Whatever pee you had left in your bladder passed through the urinary catheter and into the man-made lake of a plastic bag, which was lying next to you on the bed, as still as a lake. Yellow water. Water that has been fuzzed up with electrolytes, potassium, and phosphorus. When my 4-year-old is at his mother's house, I will sometimes pick up the cotton pajamas he wore the night before and bury my face in them before passing through the 3 rooms in our house to drop them into the laundry basket. When your brother called me to tell me you had died, I had just passed the table where my kids were eating breakfast. My oldest passed his fingers through his hair. Outside your hospital window, in the afterlife of you no longer being on Earth, a garbage truck ran a stop sign, but passed through traffic unscathed. A squirrel passed between one branch to another, and when it did, its tail caught a little bit of the morning light sparking through the leaves. The family of another patient passed a cigarette back and forth on a bench. In your room, dust floated in the light, swirled over the machines, passed over your feet, your knees, swam through the air in their particular coda, some landing on your lips, your closed eyelids, your forehead, but most of the dust simply passed over your body and landed softly somewhere else. And then this last poem before I go is called Who on Earth? I should say these are all new poems going towards a manuscript in the future called Sleep. Who on earth? The sound of a basketball somewhere inside the dark tonight, somewhere in the very inside of the rain. It sounds like a bird banging itself back and forth between the walls of a chimney. In the chimney, it is always Christmas night. In me too. A holiday dark, and maybe some snow, some gust of wind, some nightshirt, some holly, some red, inedible berries, and a bird poking at them with his beak. Hello. I woke up this morning in Oregon again, just to say I love you, though you have no parents on earth, though you must by now have no body. Inside the basketball, just the sound of air, and we can't hear that. Compressed air making the skin of the basketball taut, and we can't hear that. My friend in high school playing the comic relief to a suicide in a mixtape he left behind. My older brother playing the straight man to the ceiling fan that word above his body, when all the parts of his body stopped working, just womp, 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 just womp, 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 womp. Who loved him on earth more than the socks he had taken off and folded neatly by the door? Who loved him on earth more than his sister, more than his brothers, more than his daughter loved him on earth? Who on earth? At Joseph's funeral, his parents cried and talked about how Joseph had recently returned to Christ just months before the car accident. I guess for her, that would have been squarely in the middle of just in time, Christmas night. All his friends in the pews smiled, but inside us, womp, 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 a bird breaking its neck in a chimney. I'm having a whale of a time tonight, trying to remember just who was at the funeral, my applesauce brain, my tea and cake body. Across the street, the basketball bounces, and in bed, my little son is asleep and crying at the same time, the same beat, bouncing some grief off his rib cage. All these sad boys. I want to wake them all up, shake the dust off their bones, kiss the sleep out of their eyes, smooth the sticky hair away from their foreheads, hold them and walk them through the house and pat them softly on their backs, between their shoulder blades, singing, there, 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 oh, how are we ever loved on earth. Thanks, you guys. Have a great rest of your reading.
Wow, Matthew, Anupama, thank you so much. And happy birthday to Hamza. Enjoy the movie. Thank you for making it. And thank you for those poems, both of you. It was incredible.
Thank you so much. Blessings, everybody.
Bye. Whew. All right, up next, we have Mikey Cody Apollo and Tobias Ray.
Hi, everyone. I selected one of the pieces from my book, Black Girl Silence and Other Things Made of Gold. This piece is titled Practice. It is a shorter piece so that I didn't have to put as many limitations on my mushy intro. Practice. Even when bare, he wears all black. He is casket ready, like all men I know. I stay over for days at a time. We practice making babies until 2. After he collapses, I fall back to wonder, what if this will be the last? And like the women before me, I prepare breakfast the morning after. So much black iron and burning meat. And on cue, my sacrifice rises with the sun. Okay. It is both ritual and custom that queer students favor their English teachers, so it should come as no surprise that Tobias Ray was one of my favorite professors during my time at UW-Milwaukee. I attended his creative writing class during one of the most difficult, confusing, yet rewarding times of my life. After all, it was fall of 2016. Tobias is the type of professor who makes a quiet, honest difference in the lives of his students. He listens. He asks you questions. He pushes you to create, and then revise, which was something I didn't necessarily love about being his student, but something I think about every time I write and then rewrite a poem today. Until becoming his student, I had never really radically imagined what poetry could be, and I am so excited to continue learning from this incredible mentor and author. It is such a pleasure and joy that I introduce Tobias Ray, author of No Doubt I Will Return a Different Man, available to order now. His work is brilliant, unique, honest, like a breath of fresh air on a Sunday afternoon hike, surely a reflection of the man he is and who he will no doubt become. So without further ado, Tobias Ray.
Mikey, wow, you're just such a powerhouse. That was just wonderful. And I missed that class. That was a fun class. I'm so happy to have encountered you and all of that. Diana used the word nourishment, and I think that that's exactly what this is. So it's lovely to be in all of your company tonight, and especially you, Mikey. It's good to see you again. I'll read two brief poems, kind of companion pieces. In the first, the Turing of the title is Alan Turing. Turing in the garden, humming Bach. The crushed path leads out, leads back. I have spit my life in pieces, small as pennies, a concerto's worth of teeth and tongue, bridge and throat. Scents gather their loose sleeves. Peonies, redolent of fireworks in a fog. His love, like reptilian eyes, folds flecked and wet. A bouquet whose failing slits fall wide and spent. No doubt I am happy. And then camera field. In the photograph, the buck stares back. From a little distance, the quick steeple gesture of one raised leg. Such stillness, only permanent until. Suspended in gaze, the photographer is the real subject and watches being watched, notices the watching. The buck is more than curious, his rack held to chandelier height. His ears, his neck bear the moment the way a bridge bears gravity. Bent against this or any hunt, the buck decides when the cowbirds, under their own graces, ready to climb into the field of sky. The image cruises a simple science, all chase, all escape. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As a fellow former student sort of Toby's, I am very appreciative of Mikey's intro and that reading. It's so good to see you both and to meet you. And up next, we have an ever so slight adjustment to our lineup. Claudia Castroluna is safe and healthy, but was unable to join us at the last minute this evening. So I'm going to read a brief introduction. We're going to flip the script, an introduction she sent me for her scholarship recipient, Tyrone Ross Thompson. So in Claudia Castroluna's always beautiful words, she says, I thank the Columbia River for connecting my life to Tyrone's. He is a singular storyteller and poet, certainly for the life he breathes into his words, but also for the way he engages with the world. His own voice and that of his ancestors, the river's waters, birdsong, soil and sky, the history of the Columbia Basin commingle in him and give his work power and transcendence. I am so happy he was able to join all of us this weekend. Please welcome Tyrone Ross Thompson.
Hello, I'm Tyrone Ross Thompson, and I'm a Hawaiian poem in Nez Perce of the Columbia River. And I met Claudia through Yakima Coffee House Poets, and this poem was created through her workshop. And it's titled Fish Ladder and Horsemanship. Who has authority to decide what ancestors needed, decolonized by dividing history, the blessings of wolf capitalism, the trenches of imperialism. I remember an infant's heart failure, a fury after reading the eulogy on social media and not told the funeral. I remember a wrecked car's aftermath in the ditch. Another time, finding a lifeless body, and various others buried by suicide, violence, and slow death. Is the wool of caskets less valuable because of bias and false wealth? Erase numbers occasionally and occasionally answer, thoughtless for that moment. Shut down and felt betrayed because I was prepared after attending multiple funerals of elegant ceremony with beater buckskin, maroon shawl dresses, light and bright buckskin shirts and straps, green, yellow, and other various colors of regalia, and wool used to help us see light through sorrow. It took years to accept family loss, and facing addiction. The disease and recovery regret. Lost connection while rebuilding a family, while searching through history and recited with Shawnee humanity. Nonetheless, Tenino, the Washington side of Sligo Falls, and source of redemption. The divine center of historical importance through melanin and blood vessels, a remembrance. Through warfare and spiritual survival, from here the trail started of original kinship, represented at the banks of the river at Wallula, near the confluence, where 2,400 Nez Perce showed their horsemanship and non-cheated defiance. 165 years of assimilation before the constant one-upmanship, before the insistent validation. Any village people visited, from land of the butterflies to Tenino, where people are accepted. Before the colonial seal, sincere nobility, the hearts of wool of our matrilineal, with unmatched dignity. Hunway had the power of song and foretold of life-changing. Her symbols we acknowledge and hold. Through sinew and symbols, and letter to the creator. Oh, sorry. Sligo Fish Committee's memory is vivid. The struggle for basic dignity and power, the tenant's calm and impatient urgency, what into release for Shawnee humanity. History as deep as obsidian, and 200 YM warriors supported Kamayakan, and constantly heard of these tales in fair responsibility. At times, I didn't want this accountability. 1867, a decade after the war, a YM dreamer danced at Salilo and predicted a canal that would flood the 5 islands and a home buried. On March 10, 1957, born 2 centuries too late, is a word stated for evaluation of resentment of divide and conquer, with centuries injury and confliction. Colonial systemic oppression often caused moments of doubt. The memory neglected and death caused repression, created and living by survivors' remorse, the pain remnant and unknown future course. Nevertheless, slow reinvention, the lineage from power in place, from isolation to redemption, creating my collective drummers and dreamers with the goal of building collective power. And thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for that powerful, powerful reading. Really appreciate it. Thank you. And sending care to Claudia as well. All right. And up next, we have a double feature, our youth scholars this evening. Leah Heber is their sort of sponsor, I suppose. She's English teacher at Davis High Schools in Yakima, Washington. And she has sent our way 2 brilliant young poets, Zoe Burbank and Asphodel Fisher. So Zoe and Asphodel, I see you are here together in one Zoom cube. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Welcome. Yeah, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I'm Zoe. I don't have a title for my poem, but it'll come eventually. I wake up every morning checking the same messages, putting on the same shredded shoes, putting on the same plaster smile. I look in a hall of mirrors and every reflection is different. Every woman looking back at me is another version of myself. Like I have personalities I can hang in my closet and pull off when I need them. Sometimes it's lonely and cold, and sometimes it's comforting to know that everyone knows me, but knowing me is a different story. I don't know how to let people in even when they claw at my door. I could spin story after story eloquently, leaving out the parts that hurt me even after I've said them. I just don't know how to feel it anymore, if I'm honest. The chemistry in my brain must be off. When I was 14, I loved a boy with everything I had. We were foster siblings in public and lovers alone, and it was fucked. We were fucked. One day, he aimed my father's gun at me just to see what I would do, and I stared at the barrel and dared him to shoot. I just wanted to feel something. I didn't. He didn't shoot, and some part of me knew he wouldn't. And yet the other part of me wished he had. I buried it in knives and blood, letting his later absence be the weight over the chest my heart was buried in. I put everything there, memories locked away forever, so I didn't have to face them or feel them. Then one day I woke up and remembered everything. Sometimes I feel like there's a hole in my chest, like maybe he did shoot me, and that was why his hands were always on my chest, to staunch the blood and hold me together. Or maybe he just didn't listen to what I wanted, and that's why my 14-year-old body is decaying in my closet. I feel him most in January, in the heart of winter. He was cold and so was I, and then there was the end. I think I shall unravel someday if my memories return. If I feel it all again, I think the bullet would resurface and make a home in my heart. The gun would fire, and I would fall, and that bullet would belong. Thank you. All right, I'll try these thoughts. Okay. Okay, my poem, I actually titled it like half an hour ago. This is a work in progress I've been working on for like a month now. I just kind of add parts as I go along. A little bit of context. Forgot what I was gonna say for this. Okay, so it's called Timestamp, and the times I list in here, they weren't the same night, but I felt they all kind of tied together as they were all parts of my identity that had been bothering me and had only recently been able to put it into. So this is Timestamp. It's midnight and the GC2B binder ads on Pinterest mock me from the glowing screen 6 inches from the front of my face. And I can feel myself almost cry. There's a girl at my school who goes by Mars. The nickname is so unapologetic that every cell in my body is coated in envy, as someone uses her nickname and my dead name at the same time, without even knowing. My name, the one I picked out for myself, is a secret I keep swaddled in space between my suffering ribs. I bring it out in the middle of the night when that familiar boulder of dysphoria settles over my chest. It wraps itself around my tongue like the caress of a lover, the comforts of its touch in the middle of the night in my sheets, in front of the mirror, trying to put a face to the name. Chose it at first for the afterlife I can't help but crave, found the flower and I knew I found my name. Drew the flower for weeks, couldn't stop. When you're desperate for truth, you take what you can get. I'm so tired of hiding, of locking myself away for comfort, mine or theirs, I feel I'll never know. I wear my pronouns in my feet like shoes, and they carry me through the day, up the stairs one step at a time. With each step I say their names. She, they, she, they, she, they. I put she first like a pleasantary. The hey, how are you I used when talking to my grandmother and old friends who I don't really know anymore. Keep it there because it doesn't really bother me and I'm trying to break down walls. Bargain with time. It's 12:01 and I scroll past the ad and there's a picture of Leela Elkhorn. Then a post about a gay teenager whose mother had sent death threats from the family of her son's murderer. His name was Jason Fox. That was Newport, Washington. I looked it up. That's a 4-hour drive from here. The next post is the faces of 4 trans people who either committed suicide or were murdered for their crimes of existing. The caption says, if you made it this far, you're lucky. I don't really know what to say to that. I carry these people, their names, their stories, their deaths, like a pallbearer. And I see them in everything. The weight doesn't stop being heavy, and the empty spaces in the world that they once filled never stop aching. When I almost out myself to my mother, my heart beats fast enough for all who came before me. I'm scared of being added to the LGBT suicides Wikipedia page, of ending up on one of those social media PSAs to be double tapped and forgotten. Sometimes it feels unavoidable. Promise me, if you see me there one day, don't bother liking the post. Save the time and energy. It's not going to do jack shit. Save it for something that matters. Someone who matters. I'm done begging for your tolerance. I'm done begging for my own tolerance. Because if I'm honest with myself, I do that too. Who knows what time it is now, but I'm thinking of my father, the one I never got to know. You're long gone now. But your birthday was last week. I think this is the first time we've been celebrating it. Broke Mom's heart, I could tell in her voice over the phone, as she told me to take you your favorite flowers. I used to hate it when my sisters called you their father too. Asked about you more than I ever felt I had the right to. Hated that I was through their questions and not her answers. I learned Mom didn't mind the reminder. Hated having to share you when you weren't even theirs. And I don't have any part of you to share. I would kill for just some part of you. I'd hold it close, press it to my ribs like all of my deepest secrets. But I can count all I know of you on my fingers. What would you say if I took my name from my chest, unwrapped it and handed it to you, and tied my shoes and left them at your door? Would you love me anyway? Would you stay?
If you know I took the name you gave me and put it back in the box, returned it with a receipt, what would you do? I've no reference to go on, no memory to learn from, no way to put the words into a question I could ask. Nobody to ask, even if I could. Can't stop wondering if you'd hate me. I don't think I can live with that. How could you live with that? So wrap me in my poetry and leave me to rest. I'm ready to go. Poems like fever dream, but I never remember my dreams. Wish it away, wish it away, wish it away. So I guess it doesn't matter anyway. Thank you.
Gosh, thank you both so much. And thank you for being together in like live non-Zoom space together to join us. I appreciate seeing you together and having you both here at LiTFUSE. Just thank you so much again. And thanks to Leah for putting us all in touch with each other. It's fantastic. I have a very strong feeling we will go a little over 8 p.m. We still have a handful of poets and to read. So I'm going to, at the risk of losing folks, I'm going to take a 3-minute break. Very, very quick. So come back let's call it a 4-minute break. Come back at 7:50. Now that's a 3-minute break. And so please come right back. And if you need to stick around but keep your video off, completely understand. I know it's getting late for some people, but please do stay and hold some space for the rest of our readers, and we will be back shortly. Thank you so much. All right, welcome back. I'm gonna stick to my word at 7:50. We'll hop right back in. Thank you again to everyone who is able to stick around, and thank you to those who need to take off. I know again, some of you are in time zones where it's much later than 7:50, so thank you for your time and attention, and space and support for poetry here tonight. All right, so we are diving back in, and up next we have Brittany Corrigan, and Brittany's scholar couldn't make it this evening, but Brittany's going to share a few words about Eddie, I think, Eddie? Brittany, help me out.
It's Eddie.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so yes, I'm gonna read a poem to you from my scholar who couldn't be here tonight, and tell you a little bit about them. So Eddie Kim is a senior English major at Reed College, which is where I work here in Portland, and she's writing a creative thesis in poetry. So this poem I'm going to read to you is part of a larger collection called Fingering the Compost that she wrote during the summer of 2020 that was funded by the Caspar T. Locher Summer Creative Scholarship that we have at Reed, which funds creative projects by students for the summertime so that they can spend time doing that and not have to do work another job. So this is called The Project, The Prospect. In a garden, expect to find words like propagate, germinate, wide brim, thin skin grazed by keratin, an eager finger, a peckish beak, wrists bent like the sun gold and creeping. Imagine renewal, dust to smoke. Newborns cradled in fence, wrapped in corners, swaddled in ivy plucked of poison. Listen for where lost rain has collected into still congregation, for the dissonance of churning swamp into nourishment out of nuisance. Under your heel is where inhibition falls to rise. Thrust in the neck of another bloated mud upturned to gaze sky high, licking your fingers to taste sunrise. In the shed, we store the iron. In the bricks, we lay a building. In fertile rot, we smother thick over the face of life impending. That's Eddie Kim. And so I'm going to read sort of a companion poem to that, another garden poem. So this is from my collection Daughters, which is just out from Airlie Press this month. And it's all persona poems in the voices of daughters of various characters from folklore, mythology, popular culture, etc. And since we're tipping into fall, getting towards Halloween, which is my favorite season, I'm going to read you Vampire's Daughter, which also takes place in a garden. So, Vampire's Daughter. If I could sleep, I would dream the bright blue of skies, a gaudy show of sun. Light and color spectruming brilliantly, a feast blooming into the heat. I know there is more that begs harvesting beyond these untold furrows of red. When I feed, I imagine poppies, roses and tulips, bougainvillea, hibiscus, amaranthus, ranunculus erupt from each round wound in the skin. Peonies, hyacinth, clematis, flower, vein to vein. A creeping vine, this floral unfolding, trailing from the split of my lips. In the darkness, a garden is but a graveyard, dim bounty of silhouettes growing linearly in the draining light. Every garish display is lost to the black. The bees rehived, songbirds folded into the trees. So I have taken to remaining a bat by night. The sky is electric with sound. I tune my ears to its pitch. Flight is a gift my father finds unbecoming, striding as he does through the human world, hovering neck to neck to neck. But I have found the nocturnal flowers with their pale bodies, their intoxicating scents. Primrose, catchfly, moonflower, sweet mango and agave, jessamine, cocoa, phlox. My tongue in the honeysuckle, delving so much deeper than my teeth. My father says I will forget how to shift back again, that nectar is no substitute for blood. But oh, the musk of the night blooming Sirius when she opens her many-petaled face. I can't help but lean in to kiss her, taste her burning light. Thank you. It's an honor to be here with all of you tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brittany, and for sharing Eddie's poem, and congratulations on the book. I've been thrilled to see in the lead up of promoting LiTFUSE stuff. I feel like every time I post something, there's something about daughters. So it's been lovely to just sort of bounce back and forth in our little world of Northwestern poets out here. Thank you. Speaking of which, we have Jessica Mehta's scholarship recipient, Giacomo Ranieri, up next. And I know he wants to say a few words about Jessica.
Well, okay, first, I maybe I should start with that, I suppose.
Either way, whatever direction you want to do it.
All right, I have the poem ready first. All right, start with my poem. Lingua franca. Sailing is a physical business, trading an energetic one. That's why a ship needs a captain to keep their translator alive and protect the fine clothes made to impress. Before they learned customs and languages, the sailor learned a lingua franca. They learned to seek truthful eyes, honest eyes, shake hands without shivering, calm the mind with lungfuls of salt air. They learned to hug their mothers, connect eyes before entering one's home, never beg, but make needs clear. Waves and gestures send visual messages that foreign words can't. A universal lingua franca, an empathic message of loving connection. It's a spreading ember within the dew-dense fog filling all trading ports. It's always there, darting from sailor to sailor, like static tickling their hair follicles. True masters of communication consult the stars to choose a new course, consult the waves to ease a stomach, consult the clouds when their skin aches from sunlight. True masters of communication hug for longer and close their eyes as they lay their hands on hardened bark. Okay. Jessica Mehta is devoted to her community and her craft. I met her on a panel called Finding Funding. I was the moderator and she was the panelist. She spoke on her experience writing fellowships, writing fellowships and acquiring them, getting grants and crowdfunding to support herself with her writing. And then a few months later, she accepted me as an intern with Airly Press, which Brittany was another editor on that team. And the editing crew and I built a COVID-inspired YouTube channel where you can listen to poetry from Jessica and some other LiTFUSE staff as well, and poets and musicians from all across the world. The channel is called Airly Press Poetry. I'm proud to be a friend and colleague of Jessica's. She's supportive and inspiring writer with 15 books of poetry published over the last 8 years. She is a gift to any community she's a part of. So thank you, Jessica, for being a part of my life, and thank you for your work, and thank you for raising such lovely kitties.
And thank you, Giacomo, for that and for your reading. And it's lovely to know about the YouTube channel as well. And yeah, let's listen to poems. I mean, we're doing it now, but let's do more of it, more of it as much as we can. Thank you so much. All right, and then Crystal May Statler and Jennifer Perrine.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so I'll do mine first. And just as a preamble, I am going to share my screen, and I'm really hoping that all things are going to go great and it's going to be really fast, and then we're going to move on. So to introduce this, what I'm going to show you, my older brother, BJ, was killed by the Inglewood Police Department 2.5 years ago at the Church of Scientology in Inglewood, California. He was 30 years old. And these are an excerpt from my hybrid work called Losing Blood. Can everybody see that okay? Great. He stood between two officers. One yanked him to the ground. 3 gunshots fired. Blood poured from his mouth. Grief. Where to keep it or share it, who to give it to or hide it from, and why was it him? As he slept dead, he got his last haircut. I left the mortuary with 6 pouches of curls, bundled like gift bags from his death day. Thank you. I'm very delighted to introduce Jennifer, or JP, a poet, an educator, and in my opinion, a master at constraints, and now dearly a friend that I hope to have for the rest of my life. I met her only in April in a literary arts class, and at a distance and virtually, she exudes safety and care in ways that have lifted my spirits and give permission to continue to show up and write the truth. Jennifer is the author of 4 books of poetry: The Body is No Machine, In the Human Zoo, No Confession, No Mass, and most recently, Again, that was just published in 2020 by Airlie Press. She is also the recipient of numerous deserved features in journals and anthologies, and fellowships and awards. But for the sake of time, if I may call out one poem that's impacted me tremendously, is her beautiful outlaw poem called Sickness. Not only is it beautiful, but it continues to impact how I approach constraints and how I think about what's there and what's missing. She invites constraint to be an act of playfulness while also being precise, graceful, and infused with intention. It's my honor to turn it over to you, JP.
Thank you, Crystal. I'm grateful to be in a room full of so much love tonight. And Crystal, I feel so lucky to have met you. You and your writing gave me courage and hope at a time when I needed it, and it still does. And I think the poems I'm going to read tonight would not exist without you. So the first one is very short, and it uses a form where the number of words in each line correspond to the numbers in significant dates. And at the time that I was writing this, Crystal suggested using the word or, where the slashes between month and date and year occur, and that changed everything. So this is called Votive, and the dates are 12/26/42 to 11/5/19. First, song sparrows, or pine siskins hitch their trills to the morning, or I thumb the lighter, not enough to catch, silent or humming a tune you did or did not know I loved. That is still the question. And then in that same class in the spring, Crystal and I were writing acrostics and telestics together, and it sparked this series of poems that I wrote that use 80s song titles as their acrostics, and then a phrase from the song as the telestic, and then a line from the song as the title. So in this poem, the acrostic is Born in the USA, the telestic is The Yellow Man, and the title is You Spend Half Your Life Just Covering Up. Because no matter how many times I answer the question, is it okay to use exotic if I put it in quotes? I wonder what I mean when I select both races. What forms in me each time I know you're looking me in the eye negates any location I have found in this body. Makes me lose focus when you say, is it okay though if I am citing what someone else wrote? If I meant nothing by it, meant it as a joke? No quarter, no hiding. If I respond to texts that ask, how do you feel this week? Are you okay after the shootings in Atlanta? Who can I tell how I stopped walking alone all this last year? How I go everywhere with dogs in tow. Animals humanize me. Instead, I send sorrow, rage, sorrow, until you block me or offer, Okay, well, would you at least tell me when I am saying something racist? In this equation, I am a resource, exhausted again. In this formula, any answer I give is a half answer. Any answer arrives through the mouth of an American. Thank you all.
JP, maybe forget my MC job there for a second. Thank you both so much. And Crystal, I got to share space with Crystal today in 2 classes, and it was wonderful to see and hear your work. Thank you so much, both of you. Next, we have Carissa Cummings and Amelia Diaz-Ettinger.
Hi, everyone. Today, I will read a poem from a collection that I've been working on about the beautiful world of myopia, or as you might know it, nearsightedness. We lie on our backs in the tall green of the park, watching the fibers dance through the sunset openness as they dart between the brown webs above us. The strings fly toward you as my head turns to look at your outline of pink, sunshine, and honey. Between us, quartz orbs rest on green stalks and reflect the light of the setting sun into spectrums that vibrate with each breath you take. I stretch my hands toward the orange sun, reaching for the strings in the air and pluck them. The space between us vibrates with the sounds of a harp and stillness. And I am very happy to introduce Amelia Diaz-Ettinger, a poet, a mentor, and a friend. Born in Mexico and raised in Puerto Rico, Amelia writes poems that reflect the struggle with identity often found in immigrants. She is truly an inspiration to me, and I'm so honored to be here with her. Thank you.
Whoops, instead of muting myself, I just took off the video. Thank you, Carissa. Those were lovely. And Camille Dungy was talking today about using the senses, and this collection that Carissa is working about eyesight and losing it, but the way she puts it is so beautiful. I am very grateful to be in her presence. Thank you, Lauren, for having this and LiTFUSE. I want to read a new poem in this life, but earlier on this life, I was an ornithologist, and I have gone back to writing some poems on ornithology. And I wanted to read something light, because this has been a very stressful week and we have no cancer. Yay! So that was the big news of this week after a big frightening storm. So this one is called Clark's Nutcracker, scientific name Nucifraga columbiana. After the breeding season, we often find odd mates, like this nutcracker and a starling's jay, sharing a morsel of bagels in the parking lot of Anthony Lakes. They don't fight, they simply share. While a few children without masks ride a seesaw built to make bikers out of them, their father watches with arm ready to catch. Across from the birds, another family unloads their toys, and the birds lift and flutter away simultaneous, watching intently with identical expressions. They must be famished, with their young gone, time to fatten for the winter that is yet to come. A child drops a bag of chips. The birds dive together to catch the booty. Again, they stay close. It is the end of summer, hotter than usual, with fire smoke and exhaustion from isolation. But today, the cerulean sky has brought them out. The sun shines without a curtain. Scavenging together makes me wonder if Darwin had it all wrong. Here, I see a simple joy. The Clark's beak tenderly peeks at the chip on the stellars, and both crackle in a chant not far from laughter. Thank you.
Thank you for that joyful poem and for the wonderful happy news, and to Carissa for her reading as well. Thank you so much. Also, thank you. I just want to blanket thank you to all of our Pacific Time Zone poets for waiting to the second half or third of the evening. We appreciate your willingness to hang out and stick with us. Thank you. Up next, we have my neighbors all around here in Moscow, Idaho, Jolie Fitch and Alexandra Teague. Welcome.
Thanks, Lauren. Hi. This is so fun. Literally all your poems are so good. I'm so glad to be here. I'm like deep in a research rabbit hole about like the history of mathematics. I'm like auditing this class where I don't know what's happening. It's great. But anyway, this is called Poem After Medieval Cosmology. And that's a book, and that it has an epigraph from that. Hence, at each instant of time, the souls of the dead form an actual infinite multitude of distinct objects. Poem. Hence, I can feel you from 100, from 1,000 years away, wondering, who was I? Who will I be? One of us is wrapped in silk, and one of us is. Like living this distance, to never be silk is the dream in which we're all convinced we live forever. I'm an instant of this breathing. I'm your lungs, silk, your 1,000. The word soul, such a flimsy container for all these irrational bees. Can you feel it, silk, still, what being alive was? To be spun like this, flung forever outwards, woven, tethered, hemmed like water into something tailored, 1,000-folded, something impossibly that fits. Okay, and what I have for you all is a little story about me reading Alexandra Teague's poems. So Alexandra's most recent book is called Or What We'll Call Desire, and that came out the same fall that I moved here to Idaho to be in this MFA program where she's my teacher and my friend. So her book launch happens at our little local bookstore, and Alexandra gives this amazing reading, and she's like totally in her element. She's surrounded by her community, and I'm dazzled. And I go home and read her entire book cover to cover and like don't talk about it. I kept reading her book all that fall and winter, and I saw her all the time. Like we had class together. And then several months later, I finally sent her an email that said something like, oh, hey, also liked your book. And I think that what I did not manage to formulate in that email, but can say now, is that part of what I love so much about Alexandra's poems and essays is how tangible she makes it that history is something that lives in the present. She pays sharp attention to conversations between people and texts across time, and the contradictions and infinite complications of living in the world and being human. And that is actually the tip of the iceberg of what I could say about Alexandra's work, but I'm trying to keep this reasonably short and sweet. So Alexandra, I'm beyond honored to introduce you here and excited as always to hear you read poems.
Oh my God, Jolie, that was so beautiful. And that's incredible that you were secretly reading my book all fall. I am so honored and happy to be here with you tonight and with all these other incredible poets. This has just been such a stellar, moving, mind-blowing evening of poetry. And thank you all for hanging out until the last of us go. Thank you again. And Jolie, that poem is so wonderful. And I'm so into your project on infinity. So I'm just going to read the first few of a series of sonnets that came out in the Massachusetts Review a few months ago. And these are addressed to Mitch McConnell. And if you have not written strange, somewhat angry sonnets to Mitch McConnell recently, I really recommend it. It's highly therapeutic. And they're called crossed letters from a concerned American. And crossed letters were something I discovered at Trinity College in Dublin, which was a style of writing in earlier centuries where people wrote one direction on the page, they wrote like vertically and then wrote horizontally across it to save paper. And amazingly, you can read both directions. So I take that as a sort of conceit for these. This has an epigraph from Mitch McConnell. who said more young people believe they'll see a UFO than that they'll see their own Social Security benefits. Crossed letters from a concerned American. Dear M, it's true that once I took a ferry across the Balearic Sea to Ibiza to dance all night, like an alien who hasn't heard of sleep. I had glow stick eyes and a red string bikini, which sounds glamorous, like fire ants sound exotic on a sandwich if you've never had a picnic. I mean, I had razor stubbled legs and A-cup breasts and felt lonely for Earth while I was on Earth. I was, like many Americans, a human girl. I wanted music so loud it vibrated my bones into string theory. I mean, I wanted answers to questions of the universe I didn't understand. I understood the question shouldn't be only money or men who pilfered it grain by grain from the beaches where I dug my toes. I understood foam refusing containment by shape-shifting. It's true, I wanted to feel at home like that, which is maybe how I was most humanly alien. What if you'd been there that night when they flooded the dance floor, straws and solo cups and shoes and all, and pumped in those bubbles, the raw, sideways light of strobes, raking and raking over everything like a drunk Zen garden. We were drifting stones then. We were dancing in mop water. I imagine this is how you imagine me in some slick concavity called sin, El Pecado, Los Pecadillos, the little sinful disappointments as the party after, that cheesy EDM, that sloshing dance floor, the DJs loudly foaming it in. What I mean is, you would not be wrong, and neither would I for being there, for being, as you said, Americans are too speedy. Young people don't have to believe in UFOs to take the moon personally, or to understand those scenes in B invasion movies where the alien rushes toward a human body and becomes it, like the moment strangers in train stations become most real as they hug whoever they came for. Sometimes I imagine you will peel off your human face to reveal only dust. Sometimes that you'll slip off your strange suit of hatred to show the soft, pulsing heart of you, waving like a moon jelly in a shower of cold, vertical, fire sprinkler rain, as the DJ says to. I know I paid too much for what someone else sold me as magical. I tried to escape commodification in a bikini and a tiny dress. When the music turned off so late, it was also light out. I walked to the beach that had been there blocks away, washing in all along, wave after foaming wave, waded in my wet clothes like a stray fish or the heroine of a Victorian novella. But I didn't hate or love the world enough to leave it. I floated in it, like most of us. And yes, the great gray machines of capitalism and pain kept churning. Yes, missiles in the holds of ordinary seeming planes kept flying over. What I mean is, I know I closed my eyes. I treaded water that was only sometimes even real water. I felt like the party bus driving through red lights. I might confuse the intersections of myself with everything, buoys, boys, a cruise ship's wake, the yellow quilt of the horizon. I wanted to. I'll stop there. Thank you.
I love that, Alexandra. Thank you so much. And to Jolie too, that project sounds amazing. I will have to bend your ear about that down the street sometime, one of these days soon. Thank you, thank you. Next, San Prudente and Chingy Chen.
Hello, I'd like to share my screen. Knowing it's late, I thought maybe I'd come up with a fresh, short haiku. Raising haikus in rain. Stub thumbnail full on throbbing. My hair catches dew. 2021 is the year that I met Dr. Chingy Chan online. I've never actually had the pleasure of spending physical face-to-face time with her, with them. I'm honored to introduce her as my faculty and mentor from the UW Bothell not UW, University of Washington, Buffalo. I believe she has her PhD from the University of Wisconsin, is it? UW, I forget which one, sorry. But my interaction with her has definitely been with holding space for University of Washington's BIPOC story circles, a space that we provided for undergraduate and graduate students to deal with questions of critical race issues. And I took her class for labor stories during pandemic times this spring, where her expertise as community collaborator and as a faculty mentor was very, very important for all of our student work. Her books Recombinant and The Heart's Traffic are out, and she definitely has impacted my own writing by asking us to write with community, exchanging interesting genres and cross-genre writing, challenging each other with different kinds of work, not just poetry. So without further ado, Dr. Jean Chen.
Thank you, Sam. I love the image text in the juxtaposition. It's great to see that. And a precursor maybe for tomorrow, because I'll be teaching a Haibun workshop with haiku in it. Thanks everyone for being here and staying. It's been so fantastic to hear everyone's work. And thank you, a special thank you to Lauren for all your organizing and facilitating. Spell for a whole. Born here a mutation, given a mutation immediately in what they name Misery Village 31. What do you see, said brother, exiled to another quadrant, question mark. In the middle, a hole. To one side, a highway berth appearing much more Thursday. Close to us, a demolition attached to bullet train. Hole right here, box here, steel threads, steel cars there, bumps on wax surface here, seats to magic mutating show up above and diagonal. Who cannot return to examine hole, ask remaining ones? Do you see? Question mark. 10 boxes leaking on his back. Mother's tooth and eye. 40,000 brick shacks demand windows. Neighbors punch holes for water. Do you see? Question mark. Hole here, a singer with scaffold mouth. Singer born a string of golden altered light. Singer, hole here, a radioactive suitcase. Mirror lined with silver teeth. Door full of crabs. Singer, a mouth in boat full of mattress, paper bag, masquerading as zinc roof and eye against all false honey. Body in corner is a paper bag. No, a dispersing skyrise brother who hasn't written his lesson yet. How to have peace? Question mark. An exquisite purple blind in the one purple house closed to sun. A scattered business emptying drains overnight because government won't do it. We all paid before each breakfast under soul. There were more stories alone. You see? Question mark. Landmark eye plucked from ostrich? Question mark. Hairline remediators shamefully planted because of refractory mistake? Question mark. Collector says Village 31, full of growing miserables, asks for bodies which contain fabric, sees 500 tiny threads collected as fees in jars, not alone water. Not alone electricity, not alone highway use, modification IDs if you must poke blood. I know you took them whole there and charged 5 pennies for a soft creature. All flowers here. On the flip side, light seekers attend a cathedral of spreadsheets searching new red skies. On the flip side, a healthy boy sits in chair reading alone a masterpiece. Single knife, single thread, single hole, a soft penny for a breath. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. Sam for the haiku, which we've been talking about. I think Diana said this morning she hoped the class would be a respite from just sort of all the digital things, even though it's still digital. And I feel like the image poem was exactly that, sort of within all the space, even though we're seeing each other. That was just a lovely brain break from everything else that we've been doing. And Chingy, always thank you. Thank you for everything. All right, Donna James and Lynn Coffin.
Good evening. Thank you for sticking around. My back fence neighbors have a term that they use for that experience where you go someplace in your house for a particular reason, and when you get there, you cannot remember why you went. They call it destinesia. So that's the title of my poem. On a quest upstairs, I ascend, stop 2/3 up, with questions. What am I doing here? What am I pursuing? When I spot the stack of books sitting on the top step, I put there Sunday to remind me. The woman who reddens my hair has a book exchange in her foyer. Going completely gray is more than I could bear, while the rest of me grays to disappearing. Mostly only twinge of arthritis, my world is a garden, leading to open windows above Turkish carpet, with breeze sifting through, south to north, tinkling chimes of obsidian. And yes, though I do read the news, I know how short the time our trek from eating fruits to carnivory. Seductive fantasy, telos. We don't know where we go or why. No answers, still we ask the questions. I, a tiny strand with no genetic air, go nowhere from here. Barely a ripple disturbs the atmosphere as I descend the stairs. Thank you. So I am not in a 12-step program like AA, but I do have what AA folks call a home group. And mine is for writing poetry, and it's called Easy Speak. It's an open mic venue in Seattle, and that's where I met Lynn Coffin. So I go there regularly and show up most of the time, and Lynn is a regular who shows up now and again. And when she does, I listen up because I know something really interesting is going to happen. Lynn has been writing poetry and other forms of writing for decades, and has 30 books to her name and a new one coming out. I've been writing for less than a decade. So when I think about Lynn, I think about her as one of those magical good aunts who show up now and again in our houses to give us inspiration and instruction and to teach us how to live. And for me, how to live the writer's life and how to be prolific without ever losing the punch. And from Lynn, I also get how to use writing poetry to think, to follow the language into the depths and the heights and often into profundity. So Lynn, do your magic.
Donna, thank you so much. That was wonderful. And it's always a joy when you're up at Easy Speak. I think one of the reasons it's kind of hard to be at the end, we're the second to the last. And the reason it's hard is every poem I get inspired in a different direction, want to read a different poem. And so I'm going back and forth. So I'd like to read a poem from the latest book. It's called The Artwork on the Backs of Gargoyles. And it's all Sestinas, villanelles, and 2 paradels. And if you don't know about a paradel, please read up on Billy Collins' form that he invented. And I'd like to read this poem because last Sunday, a friend of mine, a very talented sculptor, Philip Levine, who did the lady with the squashed hat in Seattle and other sculptures around, killed himself, took did a hospice thing, had lots of paperwork and set aside a time on Sunday. And so I'm going to read the second parallel in my collection and for him, and it's called Dying in the Hospital. You lie mute and don't manage to look at me. You look at me and don't manage to lie mute. You try to disappear like a stone in the lake outside. Like a stone in the lake outside, you try to disappear. You lie mute and manage to look at the lake outside. You don't try to disappear in me like a stone. I am sure of nothing in this place, and feelings of love don't belong. Feelings of love don't belong in this place, and I am sure of nothing. Since I know nothing at all, it's best not to speak of love to me. It's best not to speak at all to me, since I know nothing of love. Since I know feelings of love don't belong in this place, and I am sure of nothing, nothing at all, it's best not to speak of love to me. Nothing means anything to me now. We are a bell without sound. We are a bell without sound now. Nothing means anything to me. I'm sorry you are dying. If only I could tell you. If only I could tell you I'm sorry you're dying. Nothing means anything. I'm only sorry you're dying without me. If I could tell you we are a bell to sound now. You try to sound like a bell and tell me to look at the lake outside. I don't. Since I know feelings of love don't belong to me and I'm sure of nothing in this place, nothing at all, it's best not to speak now. You lie mute. Nothing means anything without you. If only I could manage to disappear. You're a stone of love in me. I'm sorry we are dying.
Donna and Lynn, thank you both so much. And Lynn, I'm so sorry, but also very glad to finally see you in Zoom, not only via email. Thank you so much for sharing that piece. All right, and last but in no way whatsoever least, we have Gabby Triana and Jen Lynn.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for your energy tonight. I'm so grateful to be here with you in this weird but special space. I'm going to jump right into it. I'm reading a poem of mine called Sistina for Dead Words. I was taught to remain quiet while the adults were speaking, their words a silver locket on a string. I tried to listen, but the syllables never stuck. They slipped from my ears like water I wanted to pour in my empty mouth. Spanish, always estranged when I mouth the words, emerges from my lips quietly. To me, the language sounds full like water, the sea speaking. When I was first called coconut, it stuck. I felt like my throat was tied by string. Being in large groups makes me feel strung out, invisible hands covering my mouth, brown on the outside, white on the inside, still stuck in my head. I hear people judging me quietly, voices silent. I wonder, is this a good time to speak, or should I turn myself to water? My white Spanish teacher taught me to say agua, how to form sentences neatly with string. I felt ashamed every time I spoke uncertain words with my brown mouth. As I sat in my desk quietly, all my limbs, heavy with Mexican blood, felt stuck. The sweat on my palms was sticky, and I later washed it away with water. I learned to sit with discomfort quietly. On his wall, blue lights were strung. He said he liked the way my mouth moved slow when I spoke. I prefer using paper to speak. I like the way the ink sticks to it, the way I don't need my mouth. Sometimes I can hear my voice underwater, outside of me. It sounds like string, steady until moving. Above the surface, all is quiet. Let me plunge into water. Oh, let me cut the string. Please let me love you quietly. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Last but certainly not least, we have Jen Lin, who is the incoming LiTFUSE program director. And I'm so honored to be introducing her tonight. I struggled with coming up with an introduction just because she is such a great friend, poet, and human, but I'll start with how I know her. We met 3 years ago in a poetry and poetics course at Central Washington University, and she always stood out to me in class because I could tell she was so delighted by language and poetry. Years later, this is still the case. Jen is so incredibly passionate about poetry, teaching, learning, and connecting with people. So I couldn't think of a better person to be joining the LiTFUSE team. And so without further ado, let's welcome Jen.
Thank you so much for that, Gabby. And oh, I love that poem. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being here. Thank you all for sticking with us so late. And thank you, Lauren, for everything. And yeah, stepping in as the incoming director, hard shoes to fill, Lauren. You've put together such a beautiful program, and being in this space with all of you is an honor. I'm going to read 2 poems. They're both pretty short, so we can close it out for the night. But I gotta read one that I wrote. Actually, Gabby is infused into a lot of my poems. She's worked a lot of them with me, and just her soul has intertwined with a lot of my words. So I'm going to share one from a trip that we went on together in the middle of COVID when we couldn't go to any retreats, and so we did our own. And this is one of the poems that came out of that. In fact, I think it was the same place where that poem that you just read came from. And it was called Day of Ghosts. Sometimes I imagine my costume as a thread of pearls, like Chicago fog locked inside a smile. The thread, always gray or silver, depends upon angles of light, sinks below soil, surfaces among cedars. I never knew it was so simple to extract poison with a sword, a viridescent salve. We're entering island country now, a place of driftwood and stones measuring time. The only one I hold in my hand is glass, on my fingertips curling smoke. If I knew which way was north, I would move toward the border. The way, sage and cinder, witches and jellyfish, afterglow, pond scum. And then this last one is for all of you, my poet friends. And it's a letter to one of my favorite poets, Vicente Alexandre. He's a surrealist Spanish poet. And it starts with an epigraph, because I think this really captures all that we poets experience, all humans experience, but poets in particular. Yes, poet, love and grief are your kingdom. Yours is mortal flesh that, quickened by the spirit, blazes in the night or rises up at mighty noon. Immense prophetic tongue that, licking at the sky, illuminates words that bring death to men. And that's from his poem titled The Poet. So here's my sonnet to Alexandre. Alexandre, I hear the muted songs you speak of rise, the mist from stones. I've lain my head on each. I've listened. The truth remains within the echo. I've seen the dirt upon your face. It hides a feast from edges of earth, bites taken in love. You've shared your dreams alone, naked and waiting, mountains upon your eyes. She left as birds spit flames of dew. Tell me how long it's been since you embraced the moon, light burning, cupped within your hands. I ask because the last I saw you, the dirt was still on your face, though you thought the city was empty, veiled in rot of earth, wandering, moonless man, the most sad smile and shadow. Thank you.
Oh, so good to finally hear you read poems, Jen. Not just us talking about how to do weird virtual everything in our endless Zoom meetings. We have actually met once in person, which was magical. But I am grateful, Gabby, for your beautiful poem and also your introduction, since you have much more personal and poetic history with Jen. I hope to establish one with her and everyone here over the course of the future of LiTFUSE, when I hope we will be in person and I will be there, but not in the director's chair, because Jen will be in it and making it amazing. So stay tuned for a formal introduction and, you know, I don't know, passing of baton, whatever you want to call it, on Sunday, when we end our LiTFUSE weekend with those announcements and some exciting news about 2022. And thank you everyone for being here, for sticking around. I put this in the chat. I get kind of emotional and like squishy face just listening to everyone's poems and tributes all evening. And this is my, you know, I know I've only done this for 2 years and they've both been virtual, and I have never gone to a true LiTFUSE Poetry Slam, which I hear is not to be missed. However, I can't help but love this event the most, just because it's such a love fest in all the best ways. And I learn about so many new brilliant poets that are not new to the world, but new to me. So thank you all for sharing your work. Most of us have a big day starting at 9 a.m. Pacific tomorrow. So I think I will call it a night. Thank you again for your time, attention, your words, your support for each other. And I will see many of you in Zoom tomorrow and tomorrow evening and here on after. Thank you. Good night. Sleep well.